A bowl rests on a wooden table in a quiet room. It is empty, and because it is empty, it can receive whatever is placed inside it. Tea, water, a few small flowers, or nothing at all. The bowl does not look at itself and wonder whether it has achieved enough. It does not compare its shape with the cup beside it. It does not rehearse what it should have held yesterday, or worry about what it may be asked to hold tomorrow. It simply rests there, complete in its openness. There is something gentle in that image, something almost too simple for the busy mind to trust. Perhaps you have spent much of the day feeling that you should be more than you are, more productive, more certain, more patient, more successful, more healed, more impressive. Perhaps even now, as you lie down, some part of you is still measuring. It is holding up the day against an invisible standard and asking whether you did enough, said enough, became enough. And perhaps the answer it gives is no. The mind can be very quick with that answer. It has practiced it for a long time. But for these next quiet moments, you do not need to accept the mind's verdict. You do not need to argue with it either. You can let the verdict pass through like a cloud moving across a wide night sky. The cloud is there. The sky does not resist it, and the sky does not become the cloud. You need no special knowledge for this, no perfect posture, no spiritual achievement. Let the day loosen its hold a little. Feel the weight of your body supported beneath you. Notice one breath arriving without your effort, and one breath leaving in the same quiet way. Nothing to fix, nothing to prove, just this breath, already happening. One of the kindest teachings in the Buddhist tradition is also one of the most difficult for us to believe. It is the suggestion that beneath all our effort to improve ourselves, defend ourselves, explain ourselves, and become someone worthy of peace, there is already something whole, not perfect in the ordinary sense, not free from mistakes or sadness, whole in the way the moon is whole, even when clouds cover it, whole in the way the ocean is still the ocean, whether the surface is calm or restless. We often hear such a teaching and turn it into another task. We think, I must learn to feel whole. I must become someone who no longer needs approval. I must stop trying so hard. And in this way, even the invitation to rest becomes another examination we fear we may fail. So let us be careful and tender here. You do not have to stop striving perfectly. You do not have to release every old fear tonight. You do not have to become peaceful before you are allowed to rest. You may simply notice the striving. You may notice it with the same kindness you would offer a tired animal that has been running for a very long time, not scolding it, not commanding it to be still, just sitting nearby until it realizes that, for now, there is no danger, there is nowhere it must go. There is an old story that points toward this. Long ago, in a monastery near the edge of a wide valley, a young student became known for working harder than anyone else. He woke before the morning bell. He swept the stone paths before the others had risen. He memorized every teaching he was given. When the monks sat in silence, he sat straighter. When they walked, he counted every step. When they ate, he watched every movement of his hand. The other students admired his discipline, but the young man was not peaceful. Beneath all his effort was a tight and hidden fear. He believed that if he relaxed, even for a moment, everyone would see that he did not belong there. He thought the teacher would discover that he was not wise enough, not calm enough, not pure enough. One afternoon, he went to the old teacher and bowed. "How long will it take me to awaken if I practice with all my strength?" he asked. The teacher looked at him for a while and said, "Perhaps 10 years." The student frowned. "And if I practice twice as hard, perhaps 20. The student was confused. Why would it take longer? The teacher reached for a cup and filled it with water until the water touched the very edge. "When you carry a cup like this," the teacher said, "how do you walk?" "Very carefully." "And how far can you walk before you become tired?" The student looked at the trembling surface of the water. "Not very far." The teacher set the cup down. "You are carrying yourself as if you are a cup that must never spill." That was all he said. The young student returned to his room. He did not suddenly become carefree. He did not abandon his practice. But the next morning, when he swept the path, he noticed the sound of the broom on the stones. He noticed the cool air. He noticed that no one was watching him. For a few moments, he swept not to prove that he was devoted, but simply because leaves had fallen. Nothing dramatic happened. The valley did not fill with light. The bells did not ring by themselves. Yet something in him loosened. The path did not need him to be impressive. It only needed sweeping. The breath did not need him to be spiritual. It only needed to come and go. And the teacher had never asked him to become worthy of belonging. He was already there. Perhaps there is a cup you have been carrying very carefully, an image of who you must be, a role you feel you cannot set down, the reliable one, the strong one, the successful one, the peaceful one, the person who always knows what to say, the person who never needs help, the person who is finally going to get everything together. There is nothing wrong with these hopes. They may have helped you survive. They may have helped you build a life. But holding yourself so carefully can become exhausting. Every mistake feels like a spill. Every uncertain moment feels like exposure. Every day becomes a test. Tonight, perhaps the cup can rest on the table. You do not have to throw it away. You do not have to decide who you will be tomorrow. Just set it down for the length of one breath. Feel the surface beneath your body. Let the jaw soften if it wishes. Let the hands be empty. No one is grading this moment. Nothing to prove. And because there is nothing to prove, there may be nothing to defend. Take one slow breath, if that feels comfortable. Not a better breath. Not a deeper breath than anyone else's. Just the breath that is here. When you are ready, we will continue together. We spend much of our lives repairing a self that exists mostly in our thoughts. We carry an idea of ourselves through the day, and then we keep checking whether the world agrees with it. If someone praises us, the idea brightens. If someone overlooks us, it dims. If we succeed, it stands taller. If we fail, it seems to collapse. This is not foolishness. It is human. From our earliest days, we learn to recognize ourselves in the faces around us. A smile tells us we are welcome. A frown tells us something may be wrong. We learn to adjust, to perform, to belong. In its own way, the mind is trying to protect us. But the protection can become a prison when we begin to believe that our worth rises and falls with every passing reaction. Buddhist teachings sometimes speak of the self as something less solid than it appears. This does not mean that you do not exist, or that your life does not matter. It means something gentler. It means that the person you take yourself to be is not a fixed statue. You are more like a river, changing, receiving, releasing. The river has a name, but no single drop is the river. The river has a shape, but the shape is always moving. If you are a river, there is no final version of you that must be completed tonight. There is only movement. There is only this moment of water passing through. Consider a small story. In a quiet town, a potter became famous for making bowls with perfectly smooth sides. Travelers came to buy them. Other potters studied them. The potter received many compliments, and at first he was pleased. But over the years, he became afraid of making anything imperfect. He began throwing away bowls with the smallest unevenness, a faint line in the clay, a rim that leaned a little to one side, a mark left by a finger. His workshop filled with broken pieces. One day, an old woman came to purchase a bowl. She looked through the finished work, then noticed a cracked bowl near the door. "I would like that one," she said. The potter laughed nervously. "That one is ruined." The woman picked it up. A thin crack ran down one side, but the bowl still held together. "What will you use it for?" the potter asked. "I will place a candle inside it. It will not hold water. I do not need it to hold water. The crack will show. That is how the light will get out." The potter sold her the bowl for almost nothing. That evening, as darkness fell, he walked past her small house. In the window stood the cracked bowl, and through the narrow opening in its side came a line of warm light. The potter stopped. For years, he had believed the crack was only evidence of failure. He had not asked what else it might allow. After that, he did not stop caring about his work. He still shaped the clay with attention, but he no longer broke every bowl that carried the touch of a human hand. Some held water, some held grain, some held flowers, some held light. The story does not tell us that every wound is secretly beautiful, or that pain is always a gift. Such words can feel too easy when life has been hard. The teaching is quieter than that. It says that what you call a flaw may not be the whole story. It says that usefulness is not the same as perfection. It says that a life can carry light, even where it has been marked. Perhaps there are parts of yourself you have been trying to hide from the window. A sensitivity you learned to call weakness. A need for rest you learned to call laziness. A past mistake you learned to call your identity. A sadness that has stayed longer than you expected. A body that has changed. A path that has not unfolded according to plan. The mind points to these things and says, "Fix this, and then you may be at peace." But peace does not always wait at the end of repair. Sometimes peace begins when the repair shop closes for the night. Sometimes it begins when you say, "This too is part of the bowl. This too is held." There is another story sometimes told about a gardener who became troubled by one crooked tree. The tree had grown near a wall, reaching sideways toward the sun. Its trunk bent sharply. Its branches did not form the balanced shape the gardener preferred. He considered cutting it down and planting a straighter tree in its place. Before he did, a child came into the garden on a hot afternoon and sat beneath the crooked branches. The bend in the trunk made a small hollow where the child could lean comfortably. The leaves formed a low roof of shade. The gardener watched from a distance. Later, birds nested in the same uneven branches. Moss grew along the shaded side of the trunk. In autumn, the tree dropped its leaves in a golden circle around the wall. The gardener began to understand that the tree had not failed to become a straight tree. It had become this tree. You have not failed to become someone else. You have become this person shaped by weather, by longing, by love, by what was given and what was missing. This person with certain strengths and certain tender places. This person still changing. You may care for this life without treating it as a mistake. You may grow without beginning from self-rejection. This is not giving up. It is beginning from kindness. And kindness is often a wiser ground for change than shame. Carry this with you tonight, softly. The next time the mind names something that is wrong with you, perhaps you can add one quiet phrase. That may not be the whole story. You do not need to replace the thought. You do not need to win an argument. Just open a little space around it. That may not be the whole story. Feel the body resting now. Perhaps the shoulders have been carrying an old task. Let them know the task can wait. Listen for the nearest sound, then the farthest sound. Nothing needs your response. We can move on slowly. There is a kind of tiredness that sleep alone does not cure. It comes from constant self-observation, constantly asking how you appear, whether you are doing well, whether others approve, whether you are falling behind. It is like trying to walk through a forest while holding a mirror in front of your face. You cannot see the path clearly because you are so busy checking yourself. Many of us do this without realizing it. We enter a room and immediately imagine how we are being seen. We speak and then review our words. We share something and wait for a reaction. We make a choice and wonder how it will compare. Again, this is not a personal failure. The mind is social. It wants safety. It wants belonging, but it can confuse belonging with performance. True belonging is quieter. It does not say, "Become impressive and you may enter." It says, "You are here." There is an old story that points toward this. A young traveler once arrived at a mountain temple after many days on the road. He had heard that the teacher there could answer any question. The traveler wanted to make a good impression. He prepared a speech about philosophy. He rehearsed the names of many teachings. He imagined the teacher praising his intelligence. When he entered the courtyard, he found an old monk repairing a sandal. "I have come a long way to speak with the master," the traveler said. The monk nodded and continued threading the worn leather. "I have studied many difficult texts," the traveler added. The monk smiled. "I have questions about the nature of wisdom." The monk pointed to the traveler's feet. "Your sandal is torn." The traveler looked down. One strap had nearly broken. The monk set aside his own sandal and repaired the traveler's without asking anything more. The young man waited for a teaching. None came. At last he said, "When will the master see me?" The monk handed back the sandal. "He already has." The traveler stared at him. The old monk returned to his work. The young man had arrived hoping to be recognized as wise. Instead, he was recognized as tired. He had hoped someone would admire his knowledge. Instead, someone noticed his torn shoe. And in that simple attention, he felt more seen than praise had ever made him feel. Perhaps this is what many of us are truly seeking beneath the wish to prove ourselves. Not applause, not superiority, not even success. We want to be seen. We want someone to notice the worn strap. We want to know that we can arrive as we are and still be met with care. But because this need feels vulnerable, we often disguise it. We try to earn the tenderness we are afraid to request. We become useful, funny, accomplished, attractive, easy to be around. We learn to offer a polished sandal while hiding the foot that aches. Tonight, there is no audience in this room. You do not need to present a polished version of yourself to the darkness. The darkness receives you without comparison. The blanket does not ask what you achieved. The pillow does not need an explanation. The breath does not withhold itself until you have become deserving. It comes, it goes, it comes again. There is another quiet story about two friends who met each week beside a river. One friend was a skilled storyteller. He always had news, plans, clever observations. The other was quiet and often did not know what to say. The quiet friend worried that he was boring. Before each meeting, he prepared topics in his mind. He collected interesting things to share. He feared that if silence came, the friendship would disappear inside it. One evening, he arrived tired. He had no stories, no prepared questions. They sat beside the river while the light faded. After a long silence, he apologized. "I am not very good company today." His friend looked surprised. "You came," he said. "That is the company." They remained there until the first stars appeared. "You came. That is the company. You are here. That is enough for this moment. You do not have to entertain life. You do not have to persuade the night to keep you. You do not have to produce a reason for your existence before you are permitted to rest inside it. Carry this with you tonight. Perhaps your presence is not an audition. Perhaps the people who truly love you are not waiting for your performance to improve. Perhaps even you can begin to sit beside yourself without requiring conversation. Notice the next breath. Let it be ordinary. Feel the body sinking by one small degree into what supports it. There is nowhere else you need to appear. When the mind is ready, we will continue. The need to prove ourselves is often tied to time. We look ahead and imagine a future self who has finally arrived. That future self is calmer, wiser, more secure. They have answered the difficult questions. They no longer hesitate. They know what they are doing. We compare the person in this bed with that imagined person and feel the distance between them. But the future self is always standing one step beyond where we are. When we reach one goal, the mind quietly moves the line. When we solve one problem, it notices another. There is always one more room to clean, one more habit to improve, one more fear to overcome, before we allow ourselves to feel complete. This is sometimes called becoming. The mind leans forward, reaching toward what it believes will finally make this moment acceptable. Buddhist wisdom does not ask us to stop making plans or caring about tomorrow. It simply invites us to notice when tomorrow has become the price of peace today. There is a story sometimes told about a fisherman who lived beside a broad river. Each morning he pushed his small boat into the current. He was skillful and patient, but he was rarely satisfied with his catch. If he caught enough fish for the day, he wondered why he had not caught more. If the river was generous, he worried it would be empty tomorrow. If another boat returned with a larger basket, he felt his own work had been wasted. One evening, an old traveler sat on the bank and watched him pull in his nets. "You look disappointed," the traveler said. "I did not catch what I hoped." "What did you catch?" The fisherman showed him the basket. There was enough for supper and enough to share with his neighbor. The traveler nodded. "And what were you hoping to catch?" "Enough to feel that I am a good fisherman." The traveler looked out at the river. How many fish would that take? The fisherman opened his mouth, then closed it. He had never considered the question. The number changed every day. The traveler helped him carry the basket home. They cooked the fish over a small fire and ate in silence. For once, the fisherman tasted the meal before measuring it. The next morning, he still went out to work. He still repaired his nets and studied the current. But now and then, when dissatisfaction rose, he asked himself, how many would be enough to prove what I am trying to prove? Often there was no answer. Perhaps you know this moving number. How much achievement would be enough? How much approval? How much money? Recognition, beauty, knowledge, discipline, or certainty? The mind promises that the next amount will settle the question. But the question is not really about amount. It is about identity. It is asking, am I safe? Do I matter? May I rest? No number can answer that for long. A number belongs to the world of more and less. Your deepest worth does not. This does not mean that goals are empty. It means they are poor judges. A goal can guide your hands, but it cannot tell you whether your life is worthy. A result can teach you, but it cannot measure the whole river. Tonight, whatever you caught is enough to set beside the fire. The day may have been generous. It may have been sparse. Perhaps you finished what you hoped. Perhaps you barely made it through. The basket can be placed down. You are not required to count it again in the dark. There is another story about a baker who rose before dawn each day. She took pride in making beautiful loaves. She folded the dough carefully, waited for it to rise, and listened for the hollow sound that told her the bread was ready. One morning, distracted by worry, she forgot to add salt to several loaves. When customers tasted the bread, some returned it. The baker felt ashamed. She imagined that everyone in the village would remember her mistake. That evening, she went to an elder who had bought bread from her for many years. "I have ruined my name," she said. The elder placed yesterday's loaf on the table. "What is this?" "My bread." "Yesterday's bread." "Yes." "Was it good?" "It was." The elder placed one of the unsalted loaves beside it. "And this?" "My mistake." The elder broke both loaves and placed a piece of each in a bowl of soup. "Yesterday's bread is gone," she said. "Today's mistake will be gone too. Tomorrow, you will bake again." The baker began to cry, not because the problem had vanished, but because it had been returned to its proper size. One batch of bread, one morning, one human mistake. The mind often takes a passing event and turns it into a permanent identity. "I failed" becomes "I am a failure." "I spoke carelessly" becomes "I ruin everything." "Someone did not choose me" becomes "I am not worth choosing." This is how a moment becomes a prison. But moments are bread. They are made, tasted, learned from, and gone. You may apologize where apology is needed. You may repair what can be repaired. You may bake again tomorrow. None of this requires you to turn the whole self into a verdict. Carry this tonight. Return each mistake to its true size. Not your entire life, not your final meaning. One moment in a long river of moments. Feel the quiet around you. Let the eyes rest behind the eyelids. Perhaps the forehead can smooth without being told. There is nothing to count right now, nothing to calculate. The river keeps moving without your supervision. We may also spend our lives trying to fix feelings. Sadness appears, and we ask how to remove it. Anxiety appears, and we search for the fastest door out. Loneliness appears, and we decide it means something is wrong with us. Even joy can make us nervous, because we know it will change. The wish to feel better is natural. Pain asks for care. Yet when every difficult feeling becomes an emergency, the heart never receives permission to be human. Buddhist teachings often compare feelings to weather. Weather is real. It changes what the day feels like. It may be pleasant or uncomfortable. But weather is not a moral judgment on the sky. Rain does not mean the sky has failed. A storm does not mean the sky must be repaired. And sadness does not mean that you are broken. Consider a story about a woman who lived near a lake. Each morning she carried 2 buckets from her home to the water. One bucket was new and held every drop. The other had a small crack and leaked along the path. The cracked bucket felt ashamed. By the time they reached the house, it was only half full. At last, the bucket spoke to the woman. "You should replace me. I cannot do what I am meant to do." The woman set both buckets down. "Look at the path," she said. Along one side grew small blue flowers. Along the other, the ground was bare. "I scattered seeds on your side," she said. "You have been watering them all season." The bucket did not become uncracked. It still lost water, but it no longer believed that leaking was the only truth about its journey. This story is often used to celebrate imperfection, but tonight, we might hear something else in it. The bucket's sadness was not a problem to eliminate. It was a message. It wanted to be understood. It wanted to know whether it still belonged. When the woman answered with attention rather than correction, The bucket could see more clearly. Your feelings may also be asking for attention rather than repair. Anxiety may be saying, something feels uncertain. Grief may be saying, something mattered deeply. Anger may be saying, a boundary was crossed. Loneliness may be saying, I long to be met. These messages are not always precise. Feelings can be shaped by old memories and tired bodies, but they do not become wiser when we shame them for arriving. Perhaps tonight, instead of asking a feeling to leave, you can let it sit at the edge of the room. You do not have to invite it into bed. You do not have to listen to every story it tells. Just allow it a chair. You can say, I know you are here. That may be enough. There is another old story about a teacher and a student walking through heavy rain. The student complained that the weather had ruined the day. The teacher held out his hand and let the rain gather in his palm. What should the sky be doing instead? He asked. Being clear, the student said. And when it is clear, what should it be doing? The student thought. Staying clear. The teacher smiled. Then you have given the sky an impossible job. They continued walking. The rain did not stop. Their robes became wet. The path became muddy. But the student began to laugh softly at the impossible job he had given the sky. Perhaps you have given your inner sky the same job. Be calm and stay calm. Be happy and stay happy. Be certain and stay certain. Never feel jealousy. Never feel fear. Never be tired. Never be affected by what happens. No human sky can meet these conditions. Freedom is not endless clear weather. It is a wider relationship with weather. It is knowing that the sky has room for clouds. It is remembering that a feeling can be present without becoming your identity or your command. Tonight, if a cloud passes through, you do not need to push it away. You may notice its shape. You may feel where it touches the body, a tightness in the chest, a heaviness behind the eyes, a restless movement in the stomach. Then notice the space around the sensation, the bed beneath it, the room around it, the night holding all of it. Carry this with you. Weather does not need a defense. You can be a little sad and still be safe in this bed. You can be uncertain and still be allowed to sleep. You can be unfinished and still be whole. Take an easy breath. Let it find its own depth. Feel the weight of the legs, the arms, the head. The body does not need to explain its weather. It can simply rest beneath the changing sky. Sometimes the urge to fix ourselves begins with comparison. We see another person's life from a distance and mistake the distance for clarity. Their path appears straight. Their confidence appears natural. Their happiness appears complete. Meanwhile, we experience our own life from the inside, where every doubt is audible. Comparison is rarely fair because it compares another person's surface with our own hidden rooms. Still, the mind compares. It does so quickly, often before we notice, and then it produces a familiar ache. I should be further along than where? Along whose path? There is a story about two seeds beneath the soil. One was a bean seed. The other was the seed of a tree. Spring rain softened the earth, and the bean seed quickly sent up a green shoot. You see, said the bean plant, this is how growing is done. The tree seed remained beneath the soil. Days passed. The bean plant climbed a small fence and opened its first flowers. The tree seed still showed nothing above the ground. You may not be growing at all, said the bean plant, but beneath the soil, the tree seed was opening slowly. A root reached downward before any branch reached toward light. By the time a small shoot appeared, the bean plant had already produced its harvest. It could not understand why the tree had taken so long. Years later, the tree stood wide and steady, holding nests in its branches and shade beneath its leaves. The bean plant had lived its own brief, generous season. Neither had grown incorrectly. They were not the same kind of life. You are not late because someone else flowered quickly. You are not failing because your roots are growing where no one can see. And you are not required to become a tree if you are a vine, or a vine if you are a flower. The teaching of karma is sometimes misunderstood as a system of reward and punishment. In its simplest sense, it points to causes and conditions. A seed grows according to its nature, and the soil, rain, light, and care available to it lives unfold through countless conditions too. What was taught to us, What was withheld, the opportunities we received, the losses we carried, the bodies we inhabit, the people who met us, the timing of events we could not control. This does not remove responsibility. It adds compassion. It reminds us that a life is not created by willpower alone. So when the mind says, "You should be where they are," perhaps you can answer, "We did not begin with the same seed, soil, season, or weather," not as an excuse, as truth, as kindness. There is another story about an apprentice who worked beside a master weaver. The apprentice admired the master's cloth, which seemed to flow from the loom without effort. Her own threads tangled, her edges wandered. She became discouraged. "One day," she said, "I will weave as easily as you." The master looked at her hands. "Perhaps," she said, "but do not wish away these hands." The apprentice did not understand. "These hands are learning what mine have forgotten," the master continued. "They are meeting each mistake for the first time. That is not lesser work." The apprentice returned to the loom. The thread tangled again, but now she noticed something tender in the struggle. Her hands were not proof of failure. They were hands in the middle of learning. You may be in the middle of learning something your mind thinks you should already know. How to rest, how to trust, how to say no, how to begin again, how to live after change, how to be kind to yourself when kindness was not modeled for you. These are not small lessons. They take the time they take. You do not need to be embarrassed by your learning hands. Carry this tonight. Your pace is not evidence against you. Perhaps you are growing downward before you grow upward. Perhaps a part of you is repairing quietly, beyond the view of others. Perhaps nothing visible is happening, and even that may be part of the season. Let the comparison loosen. Feel the body in its own place, on its own path. No other body can take this breath. No other life has exactly this shape. For now, your only pace is the gentle pace of breathing. There are moments when we do not try to prove that we are better than others. We try to prove that we are not a burden. We make ourselves small. We hide what we need. We apologize before speaking. We carry more than our share and say that it is fine. Perhaps this began as love. Perhaps you wanted to make life easier for someone. Perhaps you learned that being undemanding kept the room peaceful. Perhaps you discovered that praise came when you were helpful, quiet, capable, or strong. The pattern may have protected you. It may still be useful at times. Yet beneath it, there can be a lonely belief. I must earn my place by needing nothing. But every living thing receives. The tree receives rain. The soil receives fallen leaves. The river receives small streams. Even the lamp receives oil before it can offer light. Receiving is not failure. It is part of the exchange of life. Consider a small story. In a village near the sea lived a woman who mended fishing nets. Everyone depended on her skill. She repaired torn ropes, replaced broken knots, and worked late whenever storms damaged the boats. She was proud that she never asked for help. When her roof began to leak, she placed bowls beneath the drops. When her hands ached, she wrapped them in cloth and continued working. When neighbors offered assistance, she smiled and said, "Others need it more." One winter evening, the rain came heavily. Water entered through several places in the roof. The woman moved bowls from room to room until there were no dry places left to sleep. At last, she went to the home of an old fisherman whose nets she had repaired for many years. "I need help," she said, barely above a whisper. The fisherman put on his coat without asking her to explain. On the way, they stopped at 2 more houses. Soon, several neighbors were carrying wood, rope, and tools through the rain. By midnight, the roof was covered. Someone had lit a fire. Someone else had made soup. The woman sat near the hearth, her aching hands wrapped around a warm bowl. "I am sorry for the trouble," she said. The old fisherman shook his head. "You have tied our nets together for years," he said. "Did you think we would leave yours torn?" The woman looked around the room. She had believed that asking would reveal her weakness. Instead, it revealed the net she was already part of. We often imagine support as a debt. If someone helps us, we must repay immediately. If we rest, someone else must work harder. If we reveal a need, we will lose value. But there are forms of care that do not keep such careful accounts. A friend may be glad to know how you truly are. A loved one may feel closer when you stop pretending. A stranger may recognize their own humanity in your need. And sometimes the one who helps is also receiving. They receive trust. They receive the chance to offer what they can. They receive a place in the net. This does not mean every person is safe, or that every need will be met. Wisdom includes choosing carefully where we become vulnerable. But refusing all support does not make us invulnerable. It only makes the roof harder to mend. There is another story about a traveler crossing a high valley. He carried a large bundle on his back. A farmer passing with a cart invited him to ride. The traveler climbed into the cart but kept the bundle on his shoulders. "You may set that down," said the farmer. "Oh no," the traveler replied. "You are already carrying me. I could not ask your horse to carry my bundle too." The farmer smiled. "The horse is carrying it, whether it is on your shoulders or on the floor. Sometimes we are like that traveler. Life is already holding us, yet we keep the bundle lifted to prove that we are not asking too much. The bed is holding you now. You do not need to help it. Gravity is carrying the body. The room is holding the air. The night is carrying the hours toward morning. You may set down one small bundle. Perhaps the bundle is a conversation you keep rehearsing. Perhaps it is someone else's opinion. Perhaps it is the future of a person you love. Perhaps it is simply the belief that you must stay alert. Let the cart carry it for a while. Carry this with you tonight. Needing does not cancel your worth. Being held does not make you less whole. You can receive this mattress, this pillow, this breath, without repayment. Notice where the body still lifts itself away from support. The neck, the lower back, the hands. No need to force relaxation. Just let the message arrive. You are allowed to be carried. We will remain here for one easy breath, and then continue. Another burden we carry is the need to be understood by everyone. We explain our choices again and again. We replay conversations in which we were misread. We compose perfect sentences in the dark, hoping they will travel backward through time and change another person's mind. To be misunderstood can hurt deeply. We are relational beings. We want our intentions to be seen. We want our story to be known in its fullness. But no person can hold the whole of another. Even those who love us see through the windows of their own history. They notice certain rooms and miss others. Sometimes they misunderstand because we spoke poorly. Sometimes because they were not ready to hear. Sometimes because the view from where they stand is simply different. There is wisdom in explaining what matters. There is also wisdom in knowing when explanation has become another form of proving. There is an old story about a hermit who lived near a forest path. The villagers respected him because he was quiet and kind. One day, a rumor spread that the hermit had refused food to a hungry traveler. People became angry. Some stopped greeting him. Others spoke harshly when they passed his hut. A student who visited the hermit was distressed. "You must tell them what really happened," the student said. "The traveler refused your food because he was ill. You carried him to the next village. You did nothing wrong." The hermit was gathering firewood. "Perhaps I will explain if someone asks," he said. "But they believe something false." "Yes, does that not trouble you?" The hermit placed a branch on the pile. "It troubles me," he said, "but I do not have to turn trouble into a second life." The student waited. "The first life is here," the hermit continued. "Wood to gather, soup to cook, a bird drinking from the basin. The second life is the one in which I enter every mind in the village and arrange the furniture." The student laughed softly. In time, the traveler returned and told the villagers what had happened. The rumor faded, but the hermit had not waited for the fading before continuing to live. Perhaps you too are trying to enter someone else's mind and arrange the furniture. You want to move the chair of their judgment, open the curtain of their understanding, remove the old picture they have hung of you. Sometimes conversation can change these things. Sometimes it cannot. Your life does not have to pause outside the locked door of another person's perception. You can know what happened without making everyone agree. You can learn from criticism without making it your name. You can regret an action without accepting every story told about your character. This is not indifference. It is a boundary around your one real life. There is another story about a farmer whose horse wandered away. The neighbors came and said, "What bad luck?" The farmer replied, "Perhaps." The next day, the horse returned with another horse. The neighbors said, "What good luck?" The farmer replied, "Perhaps." The story usually continues through several changes, each one judged quickly, each one revealing itself differently later. But the heart of it can be held in that one word. Perhaps. Perhaps this praise is not the whole truth. Perhaps this criticism is not the whole truth. Perhaps this ending is not the whole story. Perhaps you do not yet know what this moment means. The word perhaps creates a small opening. It loosens the mind's fist. It does not deny experience. It simply leaves room around it. When someone approves of you, perhaps you can receive the warmth without building a throne from it. When someone disapproves, perhaps you can feel the sting without building a prison. Both are weather, moving across the open sky. Carry this tonight. You do not have to be fully understood to be real. You do not have to win every invisible trial. You do not have to prepare your defense while the world sleeps. Let the tongue rest in the mouth. Let the throat soften around words that do not need to be spoken tonight. The true story of your life is larger than any one person's version. You can return to the first life, the breath, the blanket, the quiet room. We also try to prove ourselves to people who are no longer present. A parent whose praise was difficult to earn, a teacher who underestimated us, a former friend who dismissed our dream, someone who left, someone who never saw us clearly. Years may pass, and still a hidden part of us is building a house to show them, achieving a goal to answer them, becoming unhurt to defeat them. This is understandable. The heart wants completion. It wants the old wound to receive a different ending. Yet sometimes the person we are trying to convince is now only a voice inside us. There is a story about an arrow maker who learned his craft from a stern master. The master rarely praised him. If an arrow flew straight, he pointed out a rough place in the wood. If the feathers were balanced, he noticed the binding. The apprentice worked harder and harder, hoping for one simple sentence: "This is good." Many years later, the apprentice became a respected arrow maker in another village. His arrows flew cleanly. Hunters trusted his work. Students came to learn from him. Still, each time he finished an arrow, he heard the old master's voice finding fault. One evening, he traveled back to the workshop where he had trained. The master had died, and the building stood empty. Dust lay on the bench. Old wood shavings remained in a corner. The arrow maker placed his finest arrow on the table. For a long time, he waited. No judgment came from the room, only wind through the doorway. At last, he picked up the arrow and examined it with his own eyes. He saw one small imperfection. He also saw balance, care, and years of practice. "It is good," he said aloud. The words sounded unfamiliar. He said them again. "It is good." He did not mean perfect. He meant complete enough to leave his hands. Then he carried the arrow home. There may be work you are still placing on an empty table, a life you are still offering to someone who cannot respond in the way you need. Perhaps they are gone. Perhaps they are present but unchanged. Perhaps they never learned the language of praise. Perhaps their own wounds made tenderness difficult. You do not have to deny what was missing. You do not have to pretend it did not matter. But you may begin, slowly, to take the arrow back. You may look with your own eyes. You may say, "This life is not perfect. It has rough places. It has also been shaped with care. It is good enough to leave my hands for tonight." There is another small story about a child who drew a picture and carried it to an elder. The child asked, "Is it beautiful?" The elder looked at the crooked house, the enormous sun, and the tree with blue leaves. "Did you enjoy making it?" the elder asked. "Yes." "Then beauty has already visited it." The child placed the picture on the wall. Some things receive their value in the making, not in the judgment afterward. A meal cooked with attention. A day survived with courage. A conversation approached honestly. A boundary attempted, even if the voice trembled. A small act of care no one noticed. The mind may ask whether these things were impressive. The heart may ask a simpler question. Was I here for them? Did I meet this moment as honestly as I could? That is a gentler measure. Carry this with you tonight. You may stop presenting your life to the empty room. You may offer yourself the sentence you waited to hear. You did enough for this day. You are allowed to put the work down. Feel the back of the body. Notice how much of you is already in contact with support. Let the old workshop grow quiet. No voice needs answering. The wind can pass through the doorway, and you can remain here. The idea that there is nothing to fix can sound strange when there are real problems in life. There may be decisions waiting, relationships that need care, habits that cause harm, circumstances that must change. Buddhist wisdom is not a request to ignore these things. Nothing to fix tonight does not mean nothing ever needs attention. It means you are more than a problem-solving machine. It means the wisdom required for tomorrow may be better served by rest than by another hour of anxious repetition. It means action can arise from clarity rather than self-attack. There is a difference between repair and rejection. We can repair a roof because the home matters. We do not have to hate the home for leaking. We can apologize because the relationship matters. We do not have to declare ourselves unworthy of love. We can change a habit because the body deserves care. We do not have to punish the body into obedience. Consider a story about a monk who cared for an old garden wall. Each winter, rain loosened a few stones. Each spring, the monk placed them back. A young visitor watched him work and said, "This wall is always breaking. Why not tear it down and build a perfect one?" The monk brushed soil from a stone. "Because this wall shelters the garden," he said. "But you must repair it every year." "Yes. Does that not mean it has failed?" The monk looked at the moss between the stones and the small lizard resting in the sun. "No," he said. "It means it is a wall in weather. You are a life in weather. Of course you require care. Of course some stones loosen. Of course old patterns return. This does not mean the whole structure has failed. Maintenance is not proof of brokenness. Needing sleep each night is not a flaw. Needing food again after eating is not a flaw. Needing reassurance more than once is not a flaw. Returning to the same lesson is not a flaw. Life is rhythmic. We receive, use, release, and receive again. The mind prefers permanent solutions. It wants to learn self-worth once and never doubt again. It wants to forgive once and never feel pain again. It wants one meditation, one insight, one conversation to settle everything. But perhaps wisdom is not a door we walk through only once. Perhaps it is a path through grass, made gentle by returning. There is another story about an old woman who lit a lamp each evening at her window. A child asked why she kept lighting it when it always went out by morning. "Because evening keeps coming," she said. The child thought this was a poor answer. Years later, the child grew old and understood. We do many things not because they last forever, but because they meet the moment. We light the lamp because darkness comes. We rest because tiredness comes. We offer kindness because hurt comes. We begin again because life keeps moving. There is no shame in relighting the lamp. Perhaps you have been disappointed because a lesson you thought you learned has returned. You believed you had overcome a fear, and then it appeared again. You thought you had healed from a loss, and grief visited unexpectedly. You promised yourself you would stop seeking approval, and then one careless comment unsettled you. This does not erase your growth. A familiar guest can return to a different house. You may meet the same fear with a little more space, the same grief with a little more tenderness, the same old voice with a little less obedience. Progress is not always the disappearance of difficulty. Sometimes it is the softening of your relationship with it. Carry this tonight. You are not a failed project. You are a living garden wall, a lamp lit again, a path returned to. Whatever needs repair can be met in its season. For now, let the tools rest. Let the hands unclench. Let the breath move through the body like a quiet visitor. There is no workbench here, no deadline, only the dark room, holding a life in weather. There is another kind of proving that hides inside busyness. When we stop moving, we may feel exposed. The tasks fall quiet, and beneath them, we hear questions we have avoided. Who am I when I am not useful? What remains when no one needs me? What if rest reveals that I am ordinary? The world often praises motion, a full basket, a long list, an early start. These things can be good. Work can be meaningful. Service can be beautiful. But movement becomes heavy when it is used to escape the simple fact of being. A bird does not sing to justify its branch. The branch does not hold the bird to improve its reputation. For a while, they simply meet. There is an old story about a woodcutter who was known throughout his valley for working from dawn until dark. He cut more wood than anyone else. Each year, he promised himself that once he had stored enough, he would rest. But enough kept changing. One autumn, he noticed an old man sitting beside the path each afternoon. The old man did nothing visible. Sometimes he watched leaves fall. Sometimes he closed his eyes. The woodcutter began to feel irritated. "How can you sit there while there is work to be done?" he asked. The old man looked toward the forest. "What work should I be doing?" "You could gather wood. I have enough for winter. You could repair your fence. It is repaired. You could prepare for next spring." The old man smiled. "Spring has not asked me yet." The woodcutter shook his head and returned to work. Weeks later, his axe handle split. He sat beside the path to repair it. The old man was there. For the first time, the woodcutter heard the wind moving through dry leaves. He heard a distant stream. He noticed that the afternoon light had a golden color. He finished repairing the handle, but did not stand immediately. "Am I wasting time?" he asked. The old man picked up a fallen leaf. "Does the tree waste time in winter?" The woodcutter looked at the bare branches. "No." "What is it doing?" "I do not know." "Neither does the tree," said the old man. "It is simply in winter." The woodcutter did not abandon his work, but some afternoons, when the basket was full enough, he sat beside the path. We also have inner winters, times when growth is not visible, times when energy withdraws, times when the next direction has not yet appeared. The busy mind calls these seasons unproductive. It wants green leaves in every month, but the roots may be quiet for a reason. Rest is not the opposite of life. It is one movement within life. Sleep is not lost time. It is a return to the dark soil. Perhaps you have been demanding summer from yourself in winter, demanding clarity during grief, energy during exhaustion, confidence during change, a harvest when the seed has only just been planted. You are allowed to be in the season you are in. There is another small story about a musician who played a stringed instrument in the courtyard of a temple. One evening, a string broke. The musician became upset and said the instrument was useless. An old monk lifted it and gently touched the remaining strings. A softer music emerged, incomplete but clear. "It cannot play the song I prepared," the musician said. "No," the monk replied. "What song can it play now?" This question is not always easy. When life changes, we may be unable to play the song we prepared. The body may have less energy. A relationship may have ended. A plan may no longer fit. A role may have changed. We can spend a long time trying to force the old music from the remaining strings. Grief deserves its place. We do not have to call the change good. Yet somewhere within acceptance is a gentle question. What song can be played now? Not the most impressive song. Not the song that proves nothing was lost. The song available to these hands, in this season. Perhaps tonight the only song is breathing. Perhaps it is letting the body become heavy. Perhaps it is allowing yourself to be ordinary, unseen, and still worthy of care. Carry this with you. You do not have to earn rest by reaching complete exhaustion. You do not have to fill every basket before sitting beside the path. The season does not need your argument. Notice the small spaces between sounds. Notice the pause after the breath leaves, before the next breath arrives. Nothing rushes to fill that pause. It is not empty in a lonely way. It is open. Rest there for a moment. At the center of much proving is fear. Fear that if we stop demonstrating our value, love will be withdrawn. Fear that if we are not exceptional, we will be forgotten. Fear that if we are not in control, something will fall apart. Fear is not persuaded by harshness. It does not become calm because we tell it to be reasonable. Fear often needs the same thing a frightened child needs: a steady presence, a softer voice, a little time. Buddhist practice sometimes speaks of meeting fear with awareness. Awareness is not a weapon. It is more like a lamp. It does not chase the darkness from the room by force. It simply allows us to see what is here. There is a story about a young monk who was afraid of a shadow in the meditation hall. Each night, when the lamp burned low, a large shape appeared on the wall. He knew it was foolish, but his body tightened whenever he saw it. He tried ignoring the shadow. He tried repeating wise teachings. He tried sitting with his back to it. Still, the fear returned. At last, an elder entered the hall with him. "There," the young monk whispered. "Do you see it?" The elder nodded. "What should I do?" "Bring the lamp closer." Together, they carried the lamp toward the wall. The shadow changed shape, shrinking as they approached. At the base of the wall, they found a small plant whose leaves had cast the enormous outline. The young monk laughed with relief. The elder did not say, "You were foolish." He did not say, "There was nothing to fear." There had been fear. The body had felt it. Instead, he helped the young monk bring light closer. Many fears become enormous when viewed from a distance in a dim room. What if everything goes wrong? What if I never change? What if they leave? What if I am not enough? The mind casts a small uncertainty across the whole wall of the future. Bringing the lamp closer does not mean solving every possibility. It means returning to what is actually here. In this moment, perhaps there is a thought. In this moment, perhaps there is a tight chest. In this moment, perhaps there is a body lying in a bed. The future shadow may be large, but the present plant is small enough to sit beside. There is another story about a mother and child walking home at dusk. The child heard a sound in the grass and gripped the mother's hand. "What is it?" the child asked. "I do not know," the mother said. The child was surprised. "Aren't you afraid?" "A little." "What will we do?" "We will walk together." They did not identify the sound. They did not remove all uncertainty from the path. They continued hand in hand. Sometimes courage is not knowing there is no danger. It is knowing we do not have to walk alone with our fear. Can you offer your frightened parts a hand tonight? Not a lecture, not a promise that nothing difficult will ever happen, just companionship. You might say inwardly, "I know you are trying to protect me. You can rest near me for now." This is not surrendering to fear. It is ending the argument that keeps fear awake. Fear often becomes louder when it believes it must prove its case. When we say, "You should not be here," it gathers more evidence. When we say, "I see you," it may begin to soften. Carry this with you. The shadow does not need to be fought from across the room. Bring the lamp close to one breath. Bring the lamp close to the weight of the blanket. Bring the lamp close to the simple fact that this moment is already being lived. Let the heart beat without needing to slow on command. Let the breath be shallow or deep. Awareness can sit beside whatever is here. You do not need to manufacture safety perfectly. You may simply notice the support already present. We may wonder, if there is nothing to prove, what will motivate us? Will we become careless? Will we stop growing? Many of us learn to move through life by criticism. We fear that kindness will make us weak, because harshness has been our engine, but an engine that runs on shame consumes the vehicle carrying it. There is another source of movement: care. A gardener waters a plant, not because the plant has failed, but because it is alive. A parent wraps a child in a blanket, not because the child has earned warmth, but because warmth is needed. We can act from the same care toward ourselves. Consider a story about a horse that pulled a cart through a village. Its owner believed the only way to make it move was with shouting and a sharp rope. The horse obeyed, but over time, it became anxious. It stumbled often. It feared every sound behind it. One day, the owner became ill, and his daughter took the cart. She spoke quietly to the horse. She rested when the horse tired. She learned its pace. The villagers said, "You will never carry as much that way." At first, perhaps they were right. The journeys were slower, but the horse stopped stumbling. It became steady. Over the season, the daughter carried more than her father had, not because she demanded more, but because the horse no longer spent its strength in fear. You may have an inner owner who shouts, "Faster, better, do not make a mistake, do not disappoint anyone." That voice may have carried you through difficult terrain. We do not have to hate it. It learned one way to survive. But perhaps there is also an inner daughter who can learn your pace. She does not remove responsibility. She replaces fear with relationship. She asks, what is sustainable? What care would help? What is one honest step? This kind of kindness is not soft in the sense of weak. It is soft in the way water is soft, patient, responsive, able to move around stone. Over time, water shapes the land. There is another story about a student who came to a teacher and said, "I am too lazy. I need stronger discipline. The teacher asked, when did you last rest without feeling guilty? The student could not remember. Then perhaps you are not lazy, the teacher said. Perhaps you are tired and afraid to admit it. The student began to cry. Sometimes the accusation is wrong. What we call laziness may be exhaustion. What we call weakness may be a nervous system asking for safety. What we call lack of discipline may be confusion about what matters. What we call failure may be a strategy that no longer fits. This does not mean we never need effort. It means effort becomes wiser when it begins with an accurate understanding. You cannot shame a tired body into true restoration. You cannot insult a frightened mind into trust. You cannot abandon yourself into belonging. Growth that requires self-hatred carries self-hatred into whatever it builds. Tonight, perhaps growth can wait, but the seed of another way can be planted. You may care for yourself not because you have become who you should be, but because you are alive now. Carry this with you. Kindness does not remove your direction. It changes the way you travel. You may still have goals tomorrow. You may still repair, learn, apologize, practice, and begin again. But perhaps you can loosen the rope. Let the body know it is not being driven anywhere. Feel the breath move at its own pace, like a horse walking a familiar road. No shouting, no race, just the next quiet step. Another teaching often associated with Buddhism is impermanence. Everything changes. At first, this may sound sad. We think of what we love passing away. We think of endings. But impermanence is also why a painful moment does not become the whole of life. It is why shame can loosen. It is why identity is not a sentence carved in stone. It is why the version of you who struggled yesterday does not control every tomorrow. Because things change. There is nothing fixed that must be repaired forever. There is a story about a man who carried a small piece of ice from the mountain. He admired its clear shape and wanted to preserve it. He wrapped it in cloth and placed it in a wooden box. By the time he reached the valley, the ice had melted. He opened the box and found only water. He felt that he had failed. An old woman nearby asked what he was carrying. A beautiful piece of ice, he said, but I lost it. She looked into the box. You did not lose it, she said. You are looking for its old shape. The man touched the water. The ice had not remained what he wanted, but it had not become nothing. We often suffer because we search for the old shape, the old body, the old relationship, the old certainty, the old version of ourselves who had not yet been changed by what happened. Grief is natural when a beloved shape disappears. We do not rush past it. Yet perhaps we can also ask, what has this become now? Love may become memory. A dream may become wisdom. A role may become space. A certainty may become a question we learn to live beside. Change does not always reveal its new form quickly. Sometimes the box seems empty before we recognize the water. There is another story about a monk who wrote a treasured teaching on a sheet of thin paper. He carried it for many years. The edges wore away. Rain blurred the ink. At last, only a few words remained. A student offered to copy it onto fresh paper. The monk smiled and placed the worn page in a stream. Why did you do that? The student asked. The words have already traveled, he said. The paper floated away. You do not have to preserve every lesson in its original form. You do not have to remember every insight from tonight. The words may blur as sleep approaches. That is not failure. Perhaps something has already traveled. A small permission, a softer question. The feeling that, for one moment, you did not have to earn your place in the room. This can move beneath thought, like water beneath ice. Carry this with you. You are not required to maintain one shape. You may change your mind. You may outgrow an identity. You may become quieter, slower, less interested in proving what once mattered. You may melt into a form that can travel further. Feel the edges of the body becoming less important in the dark. The breath enters from the world and returns to the world. The fixed self softens a little, not disappearing, simply resting from the work of holding one shape. Perhaps the deepest thing we try to prove is that we deserve love. We may not say this aloud. We may not even know we are asking, but the question appears in many disguises. Am I attractive enough to be chosen? Am I helpful enough to be kept? Am I interesting enough to be remembered? Am I easy enough to be loved without inconvenience? These questions can make the heart work very hard. Love, in the Buddhist sense of loving kindness, is not a prize given to the best version of a person. It is a wish for well-being, offered because a being is alive and vulnerable. May you be safe. May you have ease. May you be free from unnecessary suffering. This love does not require a performance before it begins. There is a story about a dog that wandered into a monastery courtyard. Its fur was muddy, and one paw was injured. It kept its distance from the monks, expecting to be chased away. A quiet nun placed a bowl of water near the gate and returned to her work. The dog did not approach until everyone had gone inside. The next day, she placed food beside the water. Again, she did not call or reach toward the animal. For many days this continued. The dog slowly came closer. At last, one morning, it slept beneath the steps, while the nun swept nearby. A student asked, "How did you make it trust you?" "I did not make it," the nun said. "I stopped asking it to trust before it was ready. There are parts of you that may be like that animal. They have known judgment. They expect to be chased away. When you turn toward them with grand promises and demands for immediate healing, they retreat. Trust cannot always be commanded. It may grow because the bowl appears each day. A little patience, a little food, a quiet presence that does not reach too quickly. Perhaps self-love feels too large a word. You do not need to feel warm affection for every part of yourself tonight. Maybe loving kindness begins more simply, not chasing yourself away, not calling yourself names in the dark, leaving a bowl of water near the gate. There is another story about a small child who woke from a bad dream. The father lifted the child and carried her to the window. The moon was reflected in a basin outside. The moon fell into the water, the child whispered. The father did not correct her. He stayed until her breathing slowed. Then a breeze moved across the basin, breaking the reflection into pieces. "The moon is broken," she said. The father pointed upward. The moon remained whole in the sky. The image in the water trembled, but the moon itself was untouched. Your sense of worth may tremble with conditions. A rejection disturbs the water. A mistake breaks the reflection. A difficult day makes the moon seem lost. But perhaps the deepest part of your worth is not located in the reflection. It does not rise with praise and fall with criticism. It is not created by success or destroyed by failure. The water can be restless. The moon remains whole. This is not something you must force yourself to believe. Let it be an image beside you, a quiet possibility. The reflection may be broken tonight. You may not feel confident. You may not feel lovable. You may not feel whole. Feeling is weather on the water. Wholeness may be the moon above it. Carry this with you. You do not need to feel worthy before you are treated with care. You can begin with one gentle act, letting yourself sleep, drinking water when you wake, speaking inwardly without cruelty, allowing a need to exist before deciding whether it is acceptable. The bowl at the gate does not ask the frightened animal to prove it will stay. Feel the night around you now. It has made room for every creature, every restless thought, every tired body. Let the breathing be small and natural. There is no test of trust here. There is one more place where the wish to prove ourselves often hides. It hides in the demand to know. We want certainty before we act, certainty before we trust, certainty before we rest. We tell ourselves that peace will come when every question has an answer. But life rarely offers that kind of contract. The path turns beyond what we can see. The seed opens underground. The next breath arrives from a mystery we do not control. There is a story about a traveler who came to a fork in a mountain path just as evening began. One path curved toward the forest. The other climbed along a ridge. No sign pointed the way. The traveler became anxious. He studied the ground for footprints. He watched the birds. He tried to remember every direction he had been given. The longer he stood there, the darker the valley became. An old shepherd approached with a small flock. "Which path reaches the village?" the traveler asked. "Both," said the shepherd. "Which is safer?" "That depends on the weather." "Which is faster?" "That depends on your feet." The traveler grew frustrated. "Then how am I supposed to choose?" The shepherd looked toward the fading light. "Choose the path you can begin before night." The traveler took the forest path. It was not perfect. It was muddy in places, and once he had to step around a fallen branch. But before full darkness, he saw a lamp in the village below. The teaching is not that every choice is equal. Some decisions deserve time, advice, and careful thought. The teaching is that certainty is not always available, and waiting for complete certainty can become another way of refusing to live. Perhaps there is a question your mind has carried into bed. What should I do? What will happen? How will this turn out? The mind circles the fork, hoping thought alone will create a sign. Tonight, you do not need to choose the whole path. You may simply recognize that the fork exists. You may let tomorrow bring more light. There is another small story about a monk who asked his teacher, "What will happen after I finally understand myself?" The teacher poured tea. "You will discover another cup," she said. The monk looked disappointed. Then, "Understanding never ends. Does tea become useless because you will drink again tomorrow?" The monk lifted the warm cup. We sometimes want self-knowledge to become a final possession, a complete map of why we feel, choose, love, fear, and repeat. But perhaps understanding is more like tea, enough for this moment, warm in the hands, not required to answer every future thirst. You do not need a final explanation of yourself before you can offer yourself compassion. You do not need to know exactly why you are tired before you rest. You do not need to understand every layer of a wound before you stop touching it for the night. Uncertainty is not always a hole that must be filled. Sometimes it is open sky. Sometimes not knowing allows life to remain larger than our current story. Carry this with you tonight. The unanswered question can rest beside you without becoming a command. Perhaps the answer will come later. Perhaps the question will change. Perhaps you will take one ordinary step and find that the path reveals itself beneath your feet. For now, let the fork disappear into darkness. The traveler has found shelter. The shepherd has gone home. The mountain does not require a decision from you while you sleep. Feel the gentle rise and fall of the body. Each breath enters an unknown moment and leaves it without needing certainty. The body trusts this small passage again and again. And perhaps this is why the present moment can feel so humble. It does not arrive with a certificate. It does not announce that you have finally learned enough. It offers only what is here, the sound in the room, the warmth or coolness of the air, the breath moving quietly through the body. A student once asked an old gardener how he knew when the garden was finished. The gardener looked around at the open flowers, the fallen petals, the weeds returning between stones, and the bare place where new seeds had been planted. "It is finished every evening," he said, "and unfinished every morning." The student smiled, which is true. Both are useful. At evening, the tools were cleaned and put away. The garden was allowed to be exactly what it had become that day. In the morning, care began again. This may be a gentle way to hold your own life. Finished enough for evening, unfinished enough for morning. You do not need to confuse the two. Night is not the time to drag every tool back into the garden. Night is the time to let the soil cool. Let the leaves become still. Let what has been planted rest beneath the surface. So whatever remained undone today can belong to morning. Whatever was imperfect can be part of the garden as it is. Whatever you learned can settle without being reviewed. Finished enough for evening. Let that phrase rest beside you. Not a declaration that everything is complete, a permission to stop tending for now. The garden does not accuse the gardener after dark. The seeds do not demand visible growth before dawn. The earth keeps its quiet work hidden, and you may keep yours hidden too. Perhaps sleep itself is the oldest reminder of this. Each night, we loosen our grip on the identity we carried through the day. For a while, we stop managing the story. We stop polishing the name. We stop defending the shape. The body returns to a simpler belonging. You do not have to know how to do this. Sleep has been practicing longer than thought. You only need to make a little room for it, the way a host opens a door and then steps aside. No ceremony, no achievement. Just a quiet welcome to what already knows the way. The doorway is open now. The night is quiet. Nothing is waiting on the other side except rest, arriving in its own gentle time, without proof, without permission, without effort. We have moved through many quiet rooms together, a bowl on a table, a cup filled to the edge, a cracked vessel holding light. A crooked tree offering shade, a river carrying changing water, a net repaired by many hands, a lamp brought closer to a shadow, a garden wall standing in weather, a piece of ice becoming water, a moon untouched by the trembling reflection beneath it. These images may seem separate, but perhaps they are all saying the same simple thing. Life does not need to become flawless before it can be held. You do not need to become flawless before you can be held. There is one final story that gathers these threads. In a small village, at the edge of a valley, lived an old woman who kept a simple tea house. The building was not grand. One shutter leaned. The floorboards creaked. In winter, cold air found its way beneath the door. Travelers sometimes passed through the valley and stopped for tea. Some were merchants carrying goods. Some were pilgrims. Some were workers returning home. The old woman welcomed each person in the same quiet way. Near the hearth stood a shelf of mismatched bowls. One was chipped. One was painted with a faded blue line. One was too small for soup and too large for sauce. None matched the others. A young traveler once asked why she did not replace them with a fine set. "These bowls have served many hands," she said. "But would the room not look better if everything matched?" The old woman looked around. A wet cloak hung near the fire. Muddy shoes rested by the door. An old farmer slept in the corner with his mouth slightly open. "What in this room would they need to match?" she asked. The traveler laughed. He had arrived in the valley with a heavy pack and a heavier mind. He had left his home because he felt he had disappointed everyone there. He planned to travel until he became someone new, someone worthy of returning. The old woman poured tea into a bowl with a thin crack near the rim. "Be careful," she said. "This one drips if you fill it too high." The traveler held it in both hands. "I seem to be given the broken bowl," he said. "No," she replied. "You are given the bowl that is here." He drank. The tea was warm. That evening, rain began. The traveler could not continue, so he helped the old woman close the shutters. One shutter would not fit properly. He pushed and adjusted it, growing frustrated. "It is crooked," he said. "Yes," she answered. "Should we not fix it? Tomorrow, perhaps. Tonight. Place that cloth along the edge." He did as she asked. The cloth stopped most of the wind. Later, as they sat near the hearth, he noticed water dripping from a corner of the roof into an empty pot. The roof leaks too. When it rains heavily, how can you be so calm about all these problems? The old woman stirred the fire. "I am not calm about all of them," she said. "I am calm about the ones we are not repairing tonight." The traveler looked into his tea. Outside, the rain continued. Inside, the fire was enough. The next morning he stayed to help mend the shutter. They worked slowly. The wood had swollen, and the hinges were worn. They did not make it perfect, but it closed more easily. Afterward, the old woman placed a bowl of rice before him. "You will travel on today?" she asked. "I think so." "Where are you going?" "To become someone I can bring home." The old woman sat across from him. "Who carried the wood this morning?" "I did." "Who fixed the shutter?" "We did." "Who is eating this rice?" "I am." She nodded. "Then perhaps someone has already arrived." The traveler felt tears rise. He had expected wisdom to be more complicated. He had expected a task, a vow, a mountain to climb. Instead, there was a cracked bowl in his hands. There was rice. There was morning light on the floor. He stayed one more day, then another, not because he abandoned his journey, but because for the first time, he was not using the journey to escape himself. He helped repair the roof when the weather cleared. He carried water. He listened to travelers tell their stories. Some were proud. Some were ashamed. Some were lost. The old woman served them all tea. Months later, the young traveler returned home. He had not become famous or perfectly wise. He still made mistakes. He still felt old fears. But when the mind said, "You must become someone worthy of returning," he remembered the tea house. He remembered that a room could contain a crooked shutter, a leaking roof, muddy shoes, mismatched bowls, and still be warm. He remembered that repair could happen without hatred. He remembered that not everything had to be repaired in the same night. Most of all, he remembered the old woman's question, "Who is here now?" Perhaps someone has already arrived. You have already arrived in this moment, not the improved you, not the future you, not the you who has finally answered everyone, healed everything, and earned a permanent sense of peace. This you, the one breathing now, the one who carried the day as well as they could, the one who has known effort, confusion, hope, disappointment, love, and fatigue, the one lying in the quiet, listening. And perhaps someone has already arrived. The mind may object. It may point to the leaking roof, the unfinished conversation, the habit you want to change, the work waiting tomorrow. Yes, these things can be real, and the fire can still be enough for tonight. The bowl can still hold warm tea. The room can still receive you. Nothing to fix does not mean nothing matters. It means your right to rest is not postponed until everything is resolved. Nothing to prove does not mean your life has no direction. It means direction does not have to begin in shame. You can repair the shutter tomorrow because you care about the room. You can apologize because you care about the relationship. You can learn because curiosity is alive. You can change because life is changing. But tonight, the tools can remain beside the wall. Tonight, you are not the worker. You are the traveler near the hearth. You are the bowl receiving warmth. You are the crooked tree under moonlight, not asking whether its branches are symmetrical. You are the river passing through darkness, not needing to remember each stone. You are the sky, with room for weather. You are the garden wall standing in a season. You are the moon above the restless basin. And perhaps these images are not definitions. Perhaps they are only places for the mind to rest until it no longer needs words. You do not have to remember them. You do not have to understand them correctly. You do not have to turn them into a practice for tomorrow. Let them blur at the edges. Let the stories become less clear. The fisherman returns to the river. The baker lights her oven. The monk gathers a few fallen leaves. The old woman closes the crooked shutter. The traveler finishes his tea. Everyone becomes quiet. The valley darkens. One lamp remains in the window. Perhaps you can feel the day withdrawing now. Not disappearing, only moving beyond the edge of attention. The faces you saw, the words you heard, the things you finished and the things you did not finish, they can move into the distance. You do not need to follow them. The mind may continue to offer fragments. A plan, a memory, a sentence. Let each one be a traveler passing the tea house. You do not have to ask where it came from. You do not have to invite it to stay. A thought enters. A thought leaves. The room remains. Feel the points where the body meets the bed, the back of the head, the shoulders, the hips, the legs, where the heels. Perhaps some areas feel clear and others distant. There is no correct way to sense the body. The body already knows something the proving mind forgets. It knows how to yield weight. It knows how to breathe without a plan. It knows how to move towards sleep when it is not being watched too closely. So perhaps we can stop watching. Not completely, not by force, just a little less. You do not need to check whether you are relaxed enough. You do not need to measure how close sleep is. You do not need to make sleep happen. Sleep is another guest that comes more easily when it is not interrogated at the door. Let the bowl remain empty. Let the water settle by itself. Muddy water clears when it is left undisturbed, not when a hand reaches in to arrange each grain of soil. Your mind may also settle in its own time, and if it does not settle quickly, the water is still water. The mind is still allowed to rest as it is. Nothing to fix, even this restlessness. Nothing to prove, even to yourself. Perhaps a part of you wants one final assurance, a promise that you will be all right. No one can promise every shape the future will take. The weather will change, the river will turn, the lamp will sometimes go out and need lighting again. But here is something quieter than a promise. You have met changing weather before. You have relit lamps before. You have carried water in cracked vessels. You have lived through moments you did not know how to live through until you were already living them. The wisdom you need has not always arrived as certainty. Sometimes it has arrived as the next breath, the next meal, the next hand offered, the next morning. You do not have to possess the whole path to take one step, and tonight, you do not even need the step. You may stay here. The night is not asking you to become. The darkness does not need a polished answer. The stars, hidden or visible, are not comparing their brightness with yours. There is room for you in this ordinary hour, room for the parts that are proud, and the parts that are ashamed. Room for the part that has worked hard and the part that is tired of trying. Room for hope, room for uncertainty, room for the person you were, the person you may become, and the person breathing between them. Nothing is excluded from the room, and because nothing is excluded, nothing needs to shout for entry. The old fears can sit farther from the fire now. The unfinished tasks can remain near the door. The voices of judgment can soften into sounds outside the house. Inside, there is warmth. Inside, there is one breath, then another. We have walked a long way together, though perhaps it has felt more like sitting beside many quiet things. A river, a tree, a lamp, a bowl, a worn wall, a tea house in rain. Each one has offered the same permission in its own language. Be as you are for this moment. Not forever, not as a rule. Just now. You do not have to hold on to any teaching. The mind may forget every story by morning. That is all right. Perhaps the body has heard what it needed. Perhaps the shoulders have understood a sentence the thinking mind cannot repeat. The cup has been placed on the table. The basket has been set beside the fire. The tools are resting against the wall. The argument is over for tonight. There may still be thoughts, but they do not need replies. There may still be feelings, but they do not need explanations. There may still be problems, but they do not need your hands until morning. You are allowed to be unavailable to the world for a while. You are allowed to disappear into sleep without completing yourself first. You are allowed to rest, not as a reward, but as a living being, returning to a natural rhythm. Feel the breath arriving. No proof. Feel the breath leaving. No repair. The empty bowl rests on the table. The moon remains whole above the water. The lamp burns softly in the window. And you, exactly as you are in this quiet moment, may let yourself be held. Nothing to do, nowhere to go, nothing to solve, nothing to fix, nothing to prove. Only the gentle weight of the body. Only the dark, spacious room. Only the breath, coming and going, without effort. Rest now. Sleep well.